Well, it's so non-radical that it's basically fessing up to what our lifestyles are in late 20th century Western industrial society, where mom's working, fewer kids, we're busy, 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 you know, 2 phone companies and all the rest that can just continually make our lives more interesting than it needs to be at some level. So co-housing is a way of simplifying things considerably. You know, somebody else is making dinner, somebody else is, you know, buying the lawnmower, and it's very practical. So it just became so obvious that it's not radical, it's the thing to do. It's the most practical thing to do.
Housing, one of our most basic necessities. Since time began, people have created homes and communities that reflect their cultural and social priorities. For tens of thousands of years, people have lived in small towns and villages where knowing and caring for one another was an essential part of life. Over the past 50 years, dramatic changes have taken place in our society, leaving a mismatch between today's households and the forms of available housing. Traditional housing styles no longer address the needs of a growing number of people. Single parents, the elderly, and singles living alone face a child care crisis, social isolation, and a chronic time crunch, in part because they are living in housing which no longer fits their lifestyles. At the same time, an increasingly mobile population has distanced many of us from our extended families, which have traditionally provided social and economic support. Things that people once took for granted, family, community, a sense of belonging, must now be actively sought out. As the 20th century comes to a close, a growing desire to rebuild community can be heard on a daily basis.
People are constantly coming up to us and saying, you know, I've been thinking about something like this for 20 years. You know, luckily you guys put a name on it, wrote a book that got enough other people interested in it, and now I can actually aspire to do it with a group of people, which is what you need.
Co-housing developments are neighborhoods planned by their residents and are designed to promote a sense of community by balancing the security and privacy of individual homeownership with the benefits of sharing common facilities and resources.
Financially, legally, zoning-wise, co-housing is actually very conventional. You're talking about a conventionally financed planned unit development with a community building managed by a homeowners association.
When we were going to school in Denmark in 80 and 81, I was living next to a project that I would walk by every day and notice that life there was just considerably different than normal cluster family housing.
Co-housing was first created in Denmark under the guidance of Jan Gudmund Højer, an architect and urban planner, and has grown to become a mainstream housing option in that country. Since the early 1970s, several hundred communities have been created throughout the country in both urban and rural settings. All co-housing communities share 4 simple characteristics: resident participation, design for community, extensive common facilities, and full resident management. The creation of each community involves the participation of future residents using some form of consensus decision-making. They make decisions on a wide variety of issues, including site selection, housing arrangement, building design, project financing, and marketing.
When you get people involved in making decisions about their living environment, involved with the professionals, I think you end up with a lot better product, and I think they appreciate it more and they make it work better. We tend to produce, as developers and builders, we tend to produce what we think is good for people or what we think is going to sell better, but what really makes it work is how people use it and their commitment to the product.
There's no such thing as a co-housing group walking on a project. I mean, basically the whole group does not all of a sudden decide that they got a job in St. Louis and decide to move away from the project. And in fact, it's considerably less risky than a condo project or even spec houses that you're putting on the market.
The layout of homes and common areas encourages interaction between community members while de-emphasizing the impact of automobiles by placing them at the periphery of the community.
Design can make all the difference in terms of how it functions later down the line. In fact, you know, the sense of community is built in the course of planning a project, but to the extent that it's sustained over the years is directly related to how well and how thoughtful the houses are juxtaposed to each other, where the common house is, where the parking lots are.
In this example from Denmark, the group selected an old farm complete with pastures, mature trees, and a small pond. A traditional developer would clear the land of its trees and structures and spread single-family homes over the site. Fences would be placed around each home, and a separate driveway would connect them to the street. The co-housing solution for this site would cluster the homes around a common green or plaza area, restore the old farmhouse to be used as the common building, and cluster the parking at the edge of the property, saving the trees and keeping the majority of the land in open space.
Well, one of the nice things about co-housing is that it reintroduces the idea that when you come home to your neighborhood, you have a choice between privacy and community.
Limited only by budgets and the individual constraints of their property, each community provides a variety of facilities which allows residents the opportunity to share activities and resources with one another. After the community is designed and built and everyone has moved in, the residents take over the responsibilities of managing all aspects of the neighborhood.
That co-housing groups, they can make difficult, if they have the information, they will make difficult decisions, they will hold to them, and they are very persistent to seeing things through. And because there's this commitment that is a much longer range commitment than getting this project up and built. This is a place they plan to live. This is a place they may live out their life, they may raise their children, they may need to sell their house in 5 years. So they see it as something that's very important on a very practical level and are willing to work through things in a very realistic way that they can hold to.
Since its arrival in the United States in 1988, co-housing communities have been completed in many parts of the country, with a growing number in the construction phase and hundreds more still in the early planning stages.
I think we have a lot of myths about who Americans are, which I don't find to be that true. We believe that Americans are these great individualists, but the West wasn't settled by individualists, it was settled by groups of people that worked together. The Pilgrims was a cooperative group. And so in fact, I think co-housing fits very closely with traditional American values about neighborhood and family and what's important. So in fact, I think co-housing fits very well with American values because we like to take care of things very close at home and not turn them over to government.
I have a great need for privacy, and I have enough things to keep me busy that I've always dreamed about being snowed in for a whole winter so that I could finish reading all the books I started. We know most of the people here. I mean, we really, not just, hello, how are you? We know them and have been involved with them and involved with their children and have that kind of close contact, but still we have our separate spaces, and I need my separate space.
Again, as a single person without children, I can have as much privacy as I like. I can retire into my duplex, and the soundproofing is excellent, and I hear nothing. I can sit there and read or watch TV if I want.
So I'll go through the common house, taking my laundry and say hello and not stop and talk at all. And being able to do that is an important part of it. And so one of the nice things about co-housing is that it makes your social life so much more spontaneous. And I think, in fact, people who aren't as social often do very well in co-housing because they don't have to be as conscious about it. It also works really well for couples where there's a split. Someone's much more social than someone else, than their spouse. And they can get the varying degrees within co-housing without dragging each other across town to friends' house.
I went through a divorce while living here, and there were a couple of times when I would have preferred a little more privacy.
You might not visit, somebody every day, but people are there, and it gives me a great deal of support. I can go off and leave my house. I go over to Kitsap County, where my daughter lives, spend the night, and I don't have to worry about the house and somebody to come by, and if I forgot to take my garbage out on Friday, somebody will come out and take my garbage out. And if they don't see my boxes out there, they'll go get them and put them out and things like that. It makes a lot of difference.
For the kids, it's wonderful, and he really has all these friends here, and he really has. Both of the kids have a wonderful support system. They have other adults, they can relate to, and it's great for me because it helps me out with not having to deal with it all myself.
In the summer, our backyard is the whole area. It's the street and the playground, and it's Rob and Heidi's yard and everybody else's yard, and all the way up. And the kids, I know that they go outside and they're out. I know who they're playing with. I know that if they need something, there are 10 or 12 adults around that they can go to. They don't have to depend just on me.
There are a couple of people in the community who are attractive to certain age levels of kids. And a couple of adults, like there's one adult that all the 2-year-olds kind of flock to, and because she reads to them and plays with them all the time and all that. And so it's interesting, when she gets home from work, where all the 2-year-olds go because they all go to her place. And you can find the 2-year-olds because they're all at Patsy's house reading books together.
I'm a teacher, and I have a lot of strong feelings about children being included in a community, and particularly about childcare not being a ghetto.
For myself, as a retired person, I definitely wanted to be in a situation where I had contact with small children and had a variety of ages and interests of people that I could relate to.
And as far as being a single parent, I couldn't imagine living anywhere else.
Oh, magical things happen here all the time, I feel. I'll look across the street at the community house, and there are a couple people over there playing music and singing together, and then a couple more people show up, and before you know it, we're singing together.
When you're in your kitchen, you look out on the pathway that everyone walks up and down, so you kind of see people coming and going, and there's a couple of outside sort of garden tables and chairs, and people sort of gather spontaneously, especially in the summertime, and occasionally there'll be a spontaneous potluck where people will get together and just bring a few things and sit outdoors and eat. People sit on their porches, and as you walk by, sometimes you stop and talk. There's that kind of interaction, which I think is very nice.
So when I heard about this idea of intentionally creating a village where people would make a real commitment to being involved with each other and caring about each other and supporting each other and having fun together, I knew that was what I was really wanting.
As we were moving in, one of the evenings, or one of the days that John and I were moving in, I was driving down from Montague with a car all piled full of stuff, and there was a mattress on top of the car, and John and I were meeting some friends in town for dinner, and he was biking and I was driving, and I was just going to stop by the house to drop off the mattress and get out of my grubby clothes, because it was maybe going to rain and I didn't want to leave the mattress on top of the car. So I pull up the pedestrian way, which is okay because we were moving, and I recruit somebody to help me take the mattress off the car, and before I know it, all these other people are showing up and saying, well, you know, can I take something out of your car? And I'm telling them, no, actually, I'm late for dinner. I'm just going to run in and, you know, take off my grubby clothes, put on some clean clothes, and hightail it out of here. So I bring the mattress upstairs, and I go into the room to change. And there are these people coming by going, where does this box go? Where does this box go? And by the time I got changed, I walked out, my car was empty.
For those of you considering this as a housing option, here are some suggestions from those who are currently living it.
My advice would be just to make sure that it is the kind of lifestyle for you and to do a few different things, go to dinners, go to meetings. Make sure that you have a high meeting tolerance, because it does take a lot of meetings.
Well, I think that it's important to maybe visit a few just to kind of get a sense of what it's like. Certainly reading the co-housing book is a useful thing to do.
Learning about setting my boundaries, that was a big one for me. You know, moving in was great, and I would like say to everyone, just come in, just come in. And sort of after a year, I'm like, leave, you know, I don't have any private space. But that was my own doing, so I had to learn about boundaries. I had to learn about saying no.
So my advice to the co-housing groups would be to slow down a little bit, plan to think through the whole project, apply, you know, good design principles, and don't try to consume, you know, your housing like we consume fast food.
In the next 5 years, you'll see a broader spectrum of our American society who might not have taken those first steps, but came across co-housing because their kids visited kids and lived in co-housing, or they have friends and they, well, this isn't so weird, this makes sense. And so I think that's what we saw in Denmark, and I expect that's what we'll be seeing here, is a broadening as it becomes a more ordinary American experience.
I really like living here, and I like the idea of living in co-housing. I'm at the point now where I can't imagine living somewhere else. I've thought for financial reasons or other reasons that it might be a good idea to just take the kids and go move somewhere else. And I stop and I think about it, but I wouldn't know my neighbors, and I wouldn't know who's, you know, I wouldn't have that sense of community.
For people who are interested in finding out more about co-housing or how to get involved, I have a few suggestions. One would be to contact the Co-Housing Network. The other would be to call the Co-Housing Company in Berkeley. Reading the book is an excellent resource and a good way to get started, or subscribing to the Co-Housing Journal.
Well, there's a lot of kids to play with, and I like it because it's nice and comfortable at home too.
Do it!